As the night thickened, Sarah sat alone in her family's century-old house. Every creak and groan felt like an echo from the past, yet tonight, those sounds carried an ominous weight. The distant chiming of an old grandfather clock seemed to mark the minutes slowly, each one making her feel less alone, as if something ancient and unseen was moving closer. She shook off the thought, yet a chill lingered, settling deep in her bones. And then she heard it, a faint whisper from upstairs calling her name in a voice she knew too well, her late grandmother's. Sarah's parents were out for the weekend, leaving her alone to house-sit. She'd been in this house her whole life, and although it was full of creaky floors and drafty corners, it had never scared her before. But tonight something felt off. The air was colder than usual, almost damp, like the house itself was breathing around her. She wrapped herself in a blanket, watching the clock as it inched towards midnight. Suddenly, she heard the faint shuffling of footsteps from the second floor. Her heart skipped. She was supposed to be alone. She tried to tell herself it was just the old house settling, but then came the unmistakable sound of soft humming, barely audible but there. A tune she recognized as one her grandmother used to sing when Sarah was a child. Goosebumps rose along her arms as she strained to listen. The hum continued, growing louder as it seemed to float down the stairs toward her. Gripped with a mix of dread and disbelief, she decided to check the source. Grabbing her flashlight, she moved slowly to the stairs, each step creaking louder than the last. When she reached the top, the air was colder still, heavy with the scent of her grandmother's favorite lavender perfume. She followed the smell down the hall until she reached her grandmother's old room, which had been left untouched since her passing 2 years ago. The door was slightly ajar, something she was certain it hadn't been when she last checked. Heart-pounding, Sarah pushed it open. The room was exactly as she remembered it, everything in its place except the rocking chair by the window, which was moving gently back and forth as if someone had just left it. A sudden gust of wind blew through the open window, scattering a stack of letters across the floor. She stepped inside to pick them up, noticing that they were her grandmother's old letters, ones she'd never seen before. As she bent down, she felt an icy presence pass behind her, sending a shiver down her spine. "Sarah?" The voice was unmistakable, her grandmother's. She froze, too terrified to turn around. The air around her thickened, her skin tingling as a cold hand seemed to brush her shoulder. Gathering her courage, she forced herself to look, only to find the room empty. But then, something caught her eye in the mirror across from the bed. Reflected back was not just her own face but a faint, translucent figure standing directly behind her, its features pale and hollow, yet unmistakably her grandmother's. The apparition gazed at her, lips parting in a mournful whisper. "You shouldn't be here, Sarah." Terror rooted her in place as the figure slowly faded, leaving the room colder and darker than before. She fled downstairs, heart pounding, her grandmother's voice echoing in her ears long after she'd reached the safety of the living room. When her parents returned, they found her huddled on the couch, pale and shaking. She tried to tell them about the night, but they dismissed it as a nightmare. Yet every night since, she could still hear that faint humming at midnight, a haunting lullaby from beyond the grave.